the Wall Street Journal is calling the race to succeed President Biden is heating up on the 2024 campaign trail. Now, Clay, so this is what I find so interesting about this. You have there's some political dynamics that we all need to keep in mind going into this. First of all, you're going to have, and I know it's not determined yet, and who knows, and I'm the one who always says nobody knows, right? But Clay and I know a lot, but nobody knows everything. And certainly nobody knows about the future. That it looks like it's going to be Trump as a nominee. So if it's going to be Trump as a nominee, you're going to have Trump. And I think it's going to be Biden. Clay thinks it still might not. But you're going to have two guys, if that is the case, who only can have one term. Right? Both candidates would only be able to serve 4 more years, either way. So that invites a lot of calculations on the Republican and the Democrat side about, well, who's the successor? You know, if you think about this, you got to wait 8 years before it's your time. Who knows what's going to happen in 8 years, right? I mean, you know, how do you stay relevant? What's the electorate going to look like? I mean, there's all these different things. 4 years, a lot of politicians would be like, yeah, I can war game out how to do this for the next 4 years. This is interesting because circling around on the Democrat side, you have this game that they're playing. And this is what the Wall Street Journal is writing about, where you have obviously Gavin Newsom, but a number of others as well who are doing this. Oh, I'm just, they're running kind of under the fig leaf, not running, but they're running around the country under the fig leaf that this is just about getting to know the nation and wink, wink. It's really about 2028, but it may also be about 2024 at the same time, right? So they're playing this double game, and you're starting to see a number of these candidates. But what's so interesting is this is again, the piece is about Kamala, or rather the photo in the piece is Kamala Harris, Clay. There is a vice president right now. And I think that on the one hand, you have some of these Democrats like Newsom and others who, I mean, to say that they're ambitious is the understatement of the century, but they also don't want to be seen as undermining the existing Biden-Harris ticket that is still what they've got. But they also want to prepare themselves to shove Kamala aside as soon as they can get away with it, right? So there's a dance going on here.
A part of me feels like, narratively, Buck, the only way that identity politics gets blown up in a really big way is by Joe Biden winning re-election, dying, and or becoming so incapacitated that he can no longer be president. Kamala Harris gets elevated, and everybody says, holy crap, how did this ever happen? And the answer is because California, which is ahead of the curve on this diversity and identity cosmetic theater BS, decided that Kamala Harris, half Indian, half black woman, was what they wanted the leader of California to look like, both as attorney general and then as senator. And this was the essence of her entire campaign. But Americans, remember, this is important. She dropped out of the race before any vote occurred in the Democrat primary with 1 or 2% of the support. Black people didn't rally to her. Democrats didn't rally to her. As you mentioned earlier, Buck, in theory, black women who vote 97-3 should have all said, finally, we've got, hallelujah, a black woman who is going to represent us at the head of the party ticket. They didn't show up for Kamala. And I think on many levels, it's because identity politics is so BS. But I think the whole nation, Buck, sadly, might need to see someone like Kamala Harris elevated far beyond what her actual capabilities as a leader would reflect she is able to do in order for all of this to blow up. Because
I think that involves way too much faith in people's ability to see what a mess it would be. You think people would just defend? I think so. I think if Biden, I can't believe we have to even talk about this, but if Biden won, I think he would die or become so physically incapacitated that Kamala Harris would get elevated. I want to put down this marker right now.
Can you believe that we even have to have this conversation about whether the president would die? And not because he's getting assassinated or because some unexpected occurrence happens, but just because I don't think Joe Biden can live for 5 more years based on looking at him.
He could be, eating breakfast one moment and then, the guy's that old, right? What if the president were 90 years old? Would it be strange for us to sit around and say, guys, I don't know how much longer? No, the president, he's over 80. He's going to be 82. Right? By the time he's going
to turn 81 this year, he will turn 82 next year before the election.
Right. Okay. So even before the election, he'll be 82.
I think I'm right on that.
So that's now the age thing. Democrats say it's a problem. I've been saying this all along. I know people don't want to hear it, but we all know it's true. If you're going to run a 78-year-old against an 82-year-old, it doesn't really stick all that much. So this is just one of the issues. We can talk about MAGA. Trump's amazing. He was a great president. All these phenomenal things. True, but the age thing is largely nullified as an election issue if you have people who are 78 and 82. That's just. I don't see how else you can see it other than that's the way this is going to break down. But back to the Kamala thing, if I can for a moment here. Kamala Harris. They also don't want to undermine her because, these Democrats. Newsom is the king of the stealth campaign
my boy Newsom is.
Clay's going to text him after the show. They're going to go surfing together in Malibu. He's going to get all the dirt first. He's going to get all the story. But we got to get him on the show at some point. I'm gonna come at him like
Allie's
you come
on
at Pence.
Vacation this week. We made a request and they seemed gung ho about it. I think November is when this DeSantis Newsom debate's going to happen, which to me is, again, I can understand the Biden people being like, you're debating one of the primary candidate? Like, what are you doing, dude? Like, that's super weird on Newsom's behalf. Like, the fact that he would do it.
Right?
Yeah.
So, but the way that he gets away with it is this discussion of, the implication is, it's about the blue state model. And sure, 2028, I'm thinking about it, guys, but I'm all on Team Biden. Okay. We've talked about the health issues. There's also the possibility that, and I think this is very slim, but I don't think it can be entirely discounted by the Democrats right now. I would give it 10-1 odds, but there is this possibility that Biden gets a real problem from an electoral perspective, meaning even the Democrat apparatus itself says, now, I don't think this will happen. I think Biden will be the nominee, but nobody knows. We talked about the health issue. They've got to be aware of that. That means Kamala could ascend before the end of Biden's first term. There's a possibility that Kamala Harris would have to ascend. We think it's unlikely, and we wish everyone good health and long lives and all the rest of it. But on this email thing, the pressure here is building a little bit, and this is where the National Archives says it has 5,400 Biden emails in which the president could have potentially used fake names to forward government information and to talk about business with his son Hunter. That is the Daily Mail headline. The emails are connected to the aliases Robin Ware, Robert Peters, J.R.B. Ware, all pseudonyms that 80-year-old Biden was known to use while serving. Now, the use of pseudonyms itself is not, because it's like if you use joe.biden@gmail.com, you're probably going to get a lot of emails from or Joe Biden at whitehouse.gov. You're probably going to get a lot of emails from people who you don't want to get emails from. So they use pseudonyms fine. But in these emails, there's now a FOIA request, Clay, which is why this is getting some attention. People are starting to say, Republicans are starting to demand more transparency on this, because does anybody think for 1 second that Joe Biden's OPSEC, we would have called it in the CIA, was so good that when he was writing personal emails under pseudonyms, he didn't maybe get into a little, that Hunter wasn't emailing him, hey, Dad, I need another $2 million because I'm an idiot. But they say, I think that there could be something in here. I don't know if it'll ever be enough. The Democrats abandon Biden, but I do think this is a risk factor that has entered into all of this.
Oh, I got so much on this Biden thing. So, let's just think about it in this big picture idea. I know you said, Buck, that you think that the fact that Trump is 78 versus 82 takes age off the table. Can I revise that a little bit? It blunts it as an issue. It doesn't take it off the table. I agree that okay, because Trump is obviously more with it and everything else. But I mean, Clay, if you had George W. Bush, if you had Barack Obama, if you had Mitt Romney, go down the list of candidates. That kind of a candidate, age-wise, I'm not talking about who they are as people, against Joe Biden, it's a big problem. Here, this is something interesting from that I was going to hit. This is an AP poll. What words come to mind when you think of Joe Biden or Donald Trump? Old, outdated, aging, elderly, 26% of people say that comes to mind for Joe Biden. Slow, confused, bumbling is another 15%. All right, so 41. Those are not good adjectives, right? Here's what's interesting. Same thing for Trump. 26% think that Biden is old, outdated, aging, and elderly. Only 1% of people say that about Trump. Slow, confused, bumbling. 15% say that about Biden. 3% say that about Trump. The challenge is people think Trump is dishonest. So what's interesting here, Buck, is you've got, even though they're relatively similar ages, like, for instance, Bernie is 1 year older than Joe Biden. Whatever you think about Bernie Sanders, do you think that Bernie is bumbling and old? Bernie is like sharp. I mean, I don't agree with Bernie Sanders, but if you compare him cognitively with Joe Biden, you put those guys on the stage side by side, I don't think even though Bernie's a year older, I don't think people have the same reaction to him. Does that make sense?
Bernie is still a mentally agile communist. There's no doubt about it.
Right. Like Bernie could come on this show and make arguments that we would disagree with, but he could respond to what we say and argue with us. I've said this before. I really... I
think you underestimate how Joe Biden can... Remember, people used to say they were giving him meds or something just for the debates. He can kind of go into robot mode. It's not good. You and I know it's not good, but it's not Fetterman. He hasn't had a Fetterman situation, and if he can stand up there and kind of shuffle with his feet and the whole thing, and just put his big grin on, and he's got all the stuff they've done to his face, so he doesn't look as old as he is, and he just has those big Biden smile and says the required stuff. If we're hanging our hat on Biden's going to flop at a debate against Trump, I think we got to have more of a strategy than that. I don't know. I just don't think that's likely. It didn't happen last time.
I don't know that he'll debate
2020.
So I think that's part of the challenge. And I do think that, like we were saying, we'll come back and talk about this more, but the idea, Buck, that one of our concerns would be that the president might die should never, and I don't mean, again, God
of
forbid,
natural causes because of old age is what
he's just going to die because he's old. That should never be a concern that we should ever have in America. That just shouldn't be able to happen.
Can no longer tie her shoes. Honestly, she's no longer able to dress and clothe herself. She's still a sitting senator. We have a problem as a country. That generation needs to spend more time with the grandkids and less time obsessed with power when you're talking about the political leadership.
Buck, she has power of attorney that she signed over to her daughter, and she's still representing the state of California in every major issue in the Senate. She can't even sign a contract to bind herself, yet she can vote to bind the state of California and our nation. It's crazy.